Hello, everyone. I could have started the video late, but I hit the button and was like, we're going to roll with it. I'm on a saltwater taffy kick. I apologize. Welcome back to the channel. I am your lovely host. This is, I'm going to tell you the way I say my name to my sister, and it really makes her mad. I say, my name is Kris Stanton. I call myself Christopher. Sweet boy, adorable child. You know, that's what everyone else says. But I like to say to her, I am Christopher Stanton. And she just goes, ugh. She hates it. So I say it a lot to her. But anyways, I am doing another reaction for Sam, top 3 random encounters with serial killers. So I'm sure this is going to be a hoot. Is there any spiders in it, Sam? Spider killer? Before I get started, I want to thank the YouTube community. Got together yesterday for a special snowball fight. Of course, we held it in the Midwest where it was not snowing, so it just ended up being handfuls of dirt and occasional rocks. And I was throwing glass bottles. But either way, we all had fun. We lost a few people. It happens. R.I.P. little 4-year-old Pete. As far as I'm concerned, if you take a bottle and you bash it over a 4-year-old's head, it's the same as a snowball. So it is what it is. Like and subscribe to the channel. Otherwise, you can't continue watching. You have been removed from being able to watch via YouTube. That's just, I'm saying it, so they're doing it. Like it's going to cut out for you right now. See? You subscribed and liked, so it continues. I'm going to eat some saltwater taffy and watch some videos. And you're going to watch me watch them. And you've already watched them. So you're watching me watch something you've already watched. Maybe. Either way, let's get into it and see if anybody had any encounters with me. Serial.
Alone, there are at least 2,000 active, uncaught serial killers just running wild.
Yeah.
Which means if you live in America, you may have already had an interaction with a serial killer. You just didn't know it. But today, I'm going to share 3 progressively more disturbing cases of Americans that had an interaction with a serial killer, but came to find out later that it was a serial killer. But before we get into those stories, if you're a fan of the strange, dark, and mysterious delivered in story format, then you've come to the right place, because that's all I do, and I upload 3, 4, even 5 times every week. So if that's of interest to you, then please schedule the like button for a fight with Paul on the day before Thanksgiving in Quincy, Massachusetts. Also, please subscribe to my channel and turn on all notifications so you don't miss any of my weekly uploads.
Just so everyone knows, I have a band. We're starting up. And we're playing the Mrballen theme song. I mean, we're going everywhere. We just did a whole gig at Chicago Bears Soldier Field Stadium. Sellout crowd. I was playing the keyboard. Somebody else was playing the trumpet. And then we have one guy doing the cymbals. I mean, we're all over Madison Square Garden. We actually did one gig in Canada, and all of Canada showed up. So we're good.
All right, let's get into
ready.
today's stories.
Yeah, we're good.
After spending 21 years in the U.S. Army, a man retires and moves to Central Florida with his wife and young son. Although his family had plenty of money because he had a pension coming in and his wife still worked full-time, he just got bored really quickly after moving to Central Florida and decided he would just take a job doing something just to stay occupied. And so he ended up taking a job at a highway gas station. One of the primary reasons he chose this particular job is because the owners of the gas station didn't care if his son came along to help him stock shelves and hang out behind the cash register. And so for years, that's just how it went. The man would work at the gas station and his son would tag along. Even after his son became a teenager and you'd think might be wanting to do other things, well, the town was so small, there was almost nothing to do. So his son still came along well into his teenage years. One night in 1990, his son, who was 15 years old at the time, was at the station, and he was actually taking a break sitting outside on a picnic table. He was reading a magazine, drinking a Mountain Dew, and it's dark out, and he notices out of the corner of his eye that there is a woman walking off of the highway towards the gas station. It was a very quiet night at the time, so there's no cars getting gas, there's nobody there, and there's not really anybody even driving on the highway, and so that's why she really stood out to him. And he turns and he notices her, and he thinks to himself, no one ever walks to our gas station. We're on a highway. Everybody drives here. So she must have broken down and she must be coming here to try to use our phone to call a tow truck or something like that. So the woman is walking across the lot, coming closer and closer to the gas station, and the boy at this point has turned his attention back to his magazine, but he would say later that he kept looking up and keeping an eye on her because there was something off about her. The woman ultimately walks right behind him and goes in the door into the gas station. Doesn't acknowledge the boy, doesn't say hi to him, just walks straight inside, and she starts walking up and down the aisles of the gas station. Now, from where the boy was sitting, it's all glass, so he could clearly look in and see his father behind the counter, and he could see the head of this woman as she walked in and around all these aisles. And as soon as the woman was in the store, kind of pacing around the aisles, the boy put his magazine down and was just watching. And he noticed that she was not really shopping. She was just looking down for a few seconds, wouldn't pick anything up, so she wasn't buying anything. And she would look up at the counter where his father was, and she would just stare at him, and then she'd look back down at what she was doing, and she would go through all the aisles. And at some point, the woman just kind of abandons this phony, I'm pretending to shop routine, and just walks up to the counter. Now, nobody else is in the store. There's nobody else coming in. And so the boy could actually fairly clearly hear what she was saying to his father. And she told his father that she had broken down and she needed a ride, and could he drive her to Ocala, which was the next big town north of this gas station. And the boy would say that his father acted very strangely because his father is normally incredibly pleasant with all the customers. He's very chatty even. Like, he talks to everybody who comes in the store. But as soon as this woman had gone in, his dad had seemed kind of dismissive and almost rude to this woman, and when she was talking to him, asking for a ride, he just said, no, I won't give you a ride. The woman is annoyed by how quickly she's been shot down, but instead of just taking no for an answer, she turns and looks at the boy who's sitting out on the bench, who's looking right at her, and she points at the boy, and she says, what about him? Is he your son? Can he give me a ride? The boy notices that his father, who's not within her eyesight, is looking at his son going, no. Like, whatever she wants from you, you're going to say no to it. And the boy's a little bit confused by this because he's still trying to understand why his dad was so against helping this woman, because she clearly needs our help or someone's help. But he just took his dad at face value. And when the woman's pointing at him, he knew, the boy, that if she came over and asked him.
Is there a serial killer that... is she the serial killer? Or is she working with the serial killer? I'm so lost. I mean, I'm believing that she's dangerous, but I am so lost as to who it is.
He would say no. But it wouldn't come to that because the boy's father would say to the woman, no, my son's not going to give you a ride. You need to leave here immediately. Do not come back. Leave. We're not going to help you. She's furious. She's cussing him out. She storms out and slams the door. She starts cussing at the boy, and she walks off. The whole time she's turning around and flipping them off and screaming profanities at them, but she ultimately walks off. And the dad kind of followed her out and is standing next to his son as she walks off. And the boy asks his dad, what was her deal? Why did that happen? Why did you not want to help her? And the dad just said, I don't know. There was something off about her, and I don't know how to place it, but I did not want her around you. I knew I didn't want to give her a ride. I knew she had to go. A year later, the boy is in his room when he hears his dad in the other room yelling for him to come in here and look at the TV. So he runs into the TV room, and on the TV is the same woman from the gas station, better known as Eileen Wuornos. She was a serial killer who used to pick up her...
Was that the woman that the one woman played? Oh, she's from South Africa. Oh. Oh,
male victims at gas stations in Florida. It's unclear whether the boy or the boy's father were her next victims. But by the time she had shown up at that gas station, she had already killed 4 people. And following that interaction with them at the gas station, she had gone on to kill 3 more people, including someone in Ocala, Florida, which was the town she had asked them to give her a ride to. Eileen had been caught, that's why she was on TV, and she was later sentenced to death.
I gotta look it up. I'm sorry. They made a movie about her. I swear they did. No, this isn't it. Oh, I cannot think of her name. I'm so sorry. This is driving me nuts. Oh, I'm gonna keep searching. I apologize. I have to find the name. Charlize Theron.
In the late 1970s.
Charlize Theron. Yes. Okay. Yeah. 2003 film Monster. I remember that. Wow. Sorry. Yeah. Man, that's to have just got a feeling she must have really just thoroughly creeped him out. And I'll just say this for the ladies. If you encounter a guy that just thoroughly creeps you out, you don't have to be nice to him. Just be like, please leave me alone. You're creeping me out. And make sure that you are around people. If you are in a place and you say, this guy's creeping me out, please leave me alone, go up to the bar, waitress, whatever it is, and say, the gentleman that was here is creeping me out. I don't feel safe. And before you leave, just make a phone call, get someone else there. At worst thing, call the police. And they're like, look, this guy's creeping me out. I want to leave and go home. I can't trust that this guy isn't outside or isn't going to follow me. Or, I would rather you overreact to be safe than to underreact and be killed. There.
A medical student going to school in Chicago had just gotten out of class and decided he didn't want to pay for a taxi, so he decided he would hitchhike his way home. Now, this was something he routinely did, and at the time was socially acceptable. So he goes down to the road and he puts his thumb out, and eventually a car pulls up, and he would describe the man that is pulling up as looking normal and even friendly and lighthearted. It's a middle-aged guy, and he tells the student, hey, come on in, hop inside, I'll give you a ride. The student did not feel threatened by this guy and felt like overall this was safe, and so he hops in the passenger seat. He tells this man where he wants to go. He says, okay, and they start driving off. So as they're driving, it's silent in the car. They're not making chit-chat. They're just driving along. And the student notices that the man misses the turn to go where he needs to go. And so the student turns to the man and says, hey, you missed the turn. Do you mind turning around and going back this way? Or, if you want, you can just drop me off here and I'm happy to walk. We're not that far away. The man, who had seemed really nice and lighthearted, suddenly had this really intense demeanor come over him. And he turns and looks at the student and goes, oh no, you're coming with me. The student is frozen in fear. He doesn't know what to do, but he knows immediately that this is not an idle threat. I don't know who he is, I don't know what's going to happen, but it's going to be bad for me. I have to get out.
Instantly, when they say that to me, I would attack them. Not going for the steering wheel. You go for them and the steering wheel, and you try to cause an accident. Yeah, you're going to hurt yourself, but there's a reasonable chance that could be seen by someone else. A random person who is going to call the police, come over, check on you, and all that stuff. Don't just sit there and be like, "Oh, I don't know what to do." You fight for your life. You don't go easy.
And so as soon as the car began to slow down even a little bit, I mean, they're still driving, they're not stopped. The student unlocks the door, opens the car, and jumps out of the moving car and smashes into the ground, rolls against the side of the curb, but is ultimately unhurt. And he's banged up from jumping out of a moving car, but he was able to stand up and run back to his house. He didn't call the police because he really didn't know what to tell them, because he didn't have a great description of the guy, he didn't have his license plate, and the guy didn't do anything totally aggressive. It was more of a threat, but an ambiguous threat at best. It wasn't really clear what he wanted to do with him. It definitely did not seem good, but it just wasn't enough for him to call the police. And so the student just feels lucky that he got out of there and moves on with his life. A couple of years go by. The student at this point has basically forgotten about this encounter with the stranger. And he's sitting in a cafe, he's drinking some coffee, and there's a TV on behind him. He wasn't paying attention to it, but the reporter on the TV said something that immediately piqued his interest. The reporter was talking about a guy that was currently on death row that apparently had removed all of the inside car door handles inside of his car after his first would-be victim, a college student, had apparently escaped by opening a car door while he was moving. The student runs over to the TV and sees on the screen there is an image of the guy they're talking about, this guy on death row, and it's the same guy who gave him a ride 2 years earlier. His name was John Wayne Gacy, aka the Killer Clown. He had killed over 30 men and boys in Chicago, and then after killing them in his clown room, he would stuff them into a secret crawl space in his basement. And although we can't be certain, it seems extremely likely that this med student was supposed to be the first victim of John Wayne Gacy, but he leapt out of the car, forcing John Wayne Gacy to change his strategy and make sure the next person was not able to do that.
I don't know if anybody's into serial killers. That was a terrible thing. If you're into serial killers, if it's one of those things that interests you, check out H.H. Holmes. I think his real name is Herman Mudgett. What was he from? Was he from Ohio? Ended up, I think when he was 15 or 16, he killed his first person. Went to Michigan for to be a doctor. Anyways, he's the you always hear about the 1893 World's Fair killer in Chicago. That's him. He had a murder castle. It's no longer standing, but he was an evil person. Tortured people and then had an incinerator in the basement. And I've heard some accounts. Cops went down into this incinerator room and there was just burned dust. And they said it's impossible to know if that was people or not because it was feet. I mean, not feet, but like feet tall. Just dust. And these incinerators were so high powered. I've read about them. I found out about them in, I think, the early 2000s. And then I've been all over the place with my interests in books. I've done mafia guys and serial killers, cocaine cowboys. I have a book on him that I still haven't read. My interests have changed, so I don't think I'll ever get to reading that book, which is disappointing. But yeah, that he was a nutcase. I think he actually got convicted. He did a scheme with another guy over insurance. I think the guy was going to fake his own death, and then H.H. Holmes was to collect his insurance policy and then split it with the guy. And Holmes just decided, why split it with you? And went ahead and killed the guy. And then I believe, killed his, I want to say he had 2 or 3 daughters, and I believe like one of them he just threw into a trunk, like I guess a clothing trunk or something like that. You could, just a big wooden trunk, and I don't even know if he just threw her in there and she just suffocated eventually, and he buried her alive in the trunk. I mean, it was. I'm trying to remember it. He was a crazy individual. I apologize. Let's get back to the video.
In the 1970s, a young woman and young man were on their very first date together, and it wasn't going very well. It wasn't going badly, it was just really, really awkward. They just were not meshing at all. And so as they're getting ready to leave and retire for the night, the guy is thinking to himself, I have nothing to lose here. We're probably not going to go on a second date. And he says to the woman, hey, do you want to not go home right now and actually come on a hike with me? And he goes, I know this sounds like a terrible idea, but hear me out. I go mountain climbing in this area called Provo Canyon. It's not that far from here. There are these beautiful trails that lead up the side of the canyon to these amazing scenic overlooks. And tonight it's a new moon, so there's great visibility. And I just think that you might enjoy it. And so at first, the woman is obviously a little bit hesitant. But when he says, look, I go hiking there at night all the time. I love it out there. And I promise if there's any weirdness, if you don't like being there, we'll just turn around and leave. It's totally safe. And so after a little bit of coaxing, she finally says, okay, you know what? That sounds fun. Let's go do it. And so their date that had been really awkward suddenly became really exciting. And the two of them were kind of like thrilled, like, wow, look at us making our way up for a nighttime hike through Provo Canyon. And so they arrive at the mouth of this canyon, and they're both obviously excited. And they hop out and they start walking up this trail that brings them into a heavily forested section of the canyon. Now, to this point, the guy felt like this was a really great idea. He really had gone hiking here a bunch, and he really did know the area well. But as the trail brought them into the forested area, the guy remembers feeling this overwhelming sense of dread. He didn't know why, it was just like an overwhelming sense of anxiety that something bad was going to happen to them. But he had worked so hard to convince his date to come with him, and had convinced her it was safe, that he's not about to let on to her that there was anything wrong with what they were doing. And so he put on, his strong face and just kind of suppressed it and just kept on walking and, holding her hand tight, and they just continued their walk. But his sense of dread would just build and build to the point where he was really on edge. And what he didn't know, but would find out later, is that his date, the woman, she also had this horrible sense of dread as soon as they went into the forest. But she didn't want to tell him because she didn't want to seem like a party pooper, because he seemed really excited about it. At some point, as they're walking down this path, the man steps on something that felt soft. He didn't know what it was, but it caused him to freeze immediately, and he's holding her hand. He kind of jerks her to get her to stop, and before he can even look down and see what he's standing on, he hears rustling coming from the bushes just off the trail. She hears it too, and both of them, without saying a word to each other, because again, you got to remember, they're both really stressed. They haven't let on to the other how stressed they are, but they're both basically ready to leave. And so the two of them turn around and they hightail it out of there. He has no idea what he stepped on. They don't know what they heard in the bushes, but they don't care. The anxiety was so high, they just wanted to leave. Years later, that man and woman who had this very strange date would actually be married. And they'd be sitting down watching TV together, and they're flipping through the channels, and they land on an interview with a death row inmate. And the interviewer is asking the inmate, was there ever a time that you were almost caught red-handed? And the guy being interviewed says, yes, one time. I was in the forest up in Provo Canyon one night, and a young couple came walking up the trail. I didn't see him, so I only had a chance to jump into the bushes right next to the trail, and the guy actually stepped on the body of a girl I had just killed. But for some reason, he didn't look down and see what he was standing on, and the two of them didn't notice me just a few feet away from them. They just turned around and walked away. Turns out that young couple had run into one of the worst serial killers of all time, Ted Bundy. Before Bundy was executed, he confessed to over 30 murders. But many people believe the true number of victims is much, much, much higher. So that's going to do it, guys. Let me know what you thought.
Oh, wow. That's creepy. How would you step on a body and not know? What did he step on? What part of the body would be soft? The stomach? Because My stomach, that's a big leap to step on someone's stomach. Wow. That's pretty creepy. I have another story. How about this? So, in 1997, small town I'm in, there was, it had been a Sunday morning. I don't remember exactly when. My friend and I think I stayed the night at his house. And so the next morning we jumped in the car and we were cruising around, just doing nothing. And it was somewhat I want to say it was maybe 10 a.m., but it could have been maybe 2 p.m. It was kind of early. But we're going down this street, and he was the first house. You would kind of, this road curves, and then my road, you take a left to go down my street. And his was the first house on the corner as you turned. So, you know, he had the street and then the other street, just kind of went like that. And he had a detached garage. House is still there today. Detached garage and all. And they've built an add-on, like an apartment above. So anyways, we're driving down. There is black smoke pouring out of this man's garage. And we're like, damn, his garage is on fire. But there's no flames, it's just smoke. And so we drive past it. We circle around a few blocks away, and you can just see it. It's kind of like the center of town. It's just roaring up. And we keep driving around, and other people are driving by, and they're just slowing down and just looking. But you can't see what's going on. You just see black smoke rolling out of the windows, the garage, everything. Turns out, this man, I think his name was Robert Stoker. The night before, he had taken his truck and he went down to, I'm from Peoria, Illinois. And he went down into a section in Peoria, Illinois, kind of on the it's near one of the hospitals. And there's a children's home. And this children's home deals with, I want to say, foster kids with mental disabilities and stuff like that. He drove down, picked a girl up. I apologize. I wish I had thought about this before. I would have looked up her name. He picked this girl up to give her a ride. Drove her out to the middle of the country. Raped her. And then took a knife and cut her throat. She lived because she's a badass. She crawled several miles. He just left her like in a cornfield. Went home. She crawled several miles. A couple people, my sister's ex-husband's friend actually lived in one of these farmhouses. They came home that night and there was blood all over their porch, and she had apparently crawled up and banged on their door. They weren't home, so she moved on to the next house. She ended up finding someone. They called the ambulance. They rescued her, took her to the hospital. I want to say they worked on her, but she gave the cops, she gave the police a picture of a description. I mean, I think she even had it down to the guy's smile. She gave a description of the vehicle. The only thing she didn't give was pretty much the license plate. She had the color down. I mean, she had a photographic memory. Sadly, she died, I think, about within 2 or 3 days, but she was alive to give this description. It turns out that Sunday morning, the man had found out that someone had lived, and instantly decided to disassemble his truck in his garage and set it on fire. This genius did not believe that smoke would escape little holes in the garage, because smoke will stay confined in an area, but it's a garage. It's not going to be sealed perfect. It just is what it is. Well, smoke rolled out. He ended up feeling the heat was on, and he fled to Costa Rica. His wife, I think he had 2 kids with her. She's pregnant with another one on the way. She used to say she didn't know nothing. She didn't keep up with him. That was his house. I think he lived there with her, and then his parents lived there with him. Turns out the FBI started watching the house and tapping phones, and she would be telling people, I don't know where he is. Well, she'd tell the cops that. Meanwhile, and I can attest to this, I was there. I was in the local grocery store that's now closed. She's walking around. One of the people behind the counter go, hey, where's Robert? She goes, oh, that sumbitch went to Costa Rica. He done got himself a new wife, knocked her up. He's trying to stay there to avoid extradition. I told him I'm going to divorce him. And I'm looking around at her as she's telling this to the worker. And then I kind of start to look around like, is this happening right now? Is anyone else hearing this right now? This conversation is between the wife and the worker. And I look around and I start to make out unknown faces that are looking at the Tostitos. And I'm like, yeah, you don't live here. You're a cop. You're an FBI agent. And these guys, look, she wasn't the brightest one, but these guys certainly didn't know how to blend into the community very well, because they're like looking at Tostitos and they set it down and they're like looking over at her. The only thing they didn't have was a notepad in their hand with a pen just going, Costa Rica. Keep on talking. Like that was the only, but they're looking at bags of Tostitos and they're doing this. How much information you get gleaning off the bag of Tostitos, sir? Why don't you just walk up to her and tell her who you are? The bowling alley. She could walk in there and they go, where's Robert? She was like, oh, he's in Costa Rica. She told everyone. I knew he was in Costa Rica. I mean, so to make a long, horrible story short, the FBI got with Costa Rica. Costa Rica raided this place. He was living in the jungle. The agreement was that he would be extradited back to the U.S. Because he was married in Costa Rica with a child. They said he could not have the death penalty, so he ended up getting life in jail. I wish I knew the girl's name offhand, but she was a minor, so I don't want to say the name anyways. But I'll say his name because he's a piece of crap. The wife, on the other hand, I mean, obviously she knew where he was. She was just defending it. I'm pretty sure the kids have a warped sense of reality in terms of who their father is. And his mom and dad, I don't know whatever happened to them, but I'm pretty sure they, if they're still alive or if they died, believing that, oh, he's not a terrible person. So, anyways, this was a little bit longer. I've shared it quite a bit on the past couple of videos, and I'm a little chilly right now. So I'm going to go ahead and end this here. I think I'm going to do one more video tonight, and then I'll have knocked out all 3 of Sam's videos. I'm going to do that frat boy did the unthinkable, and then I got a couple from Greg and Fran55. And Fran55, yes, I do like covering some of the early Mrballens. I know that a lot of people do the reactions to some of the later ones. I know he drops one like every Saturday anymore. The only thing I do keep up to date with is his podcast, because I listen to podcasts at work. But I've seen some of the new ones, but when I started doing this, I tried to find ones that I knew weren't being covered. So I went back. And I figure at this rate, I'll keep some distance between the current stuff and now. But I'm open to, suggestions. I do try to write them down, although I do forget. I know there's a couple people who have suggested some other people. I don't want to do videos that are too long. Like I'm turning this one into a long one. If you can keep the video at around like less than 30 minutes, just because the average view length that I get is like 7 to 10 minutes. It does go up on a video that's more, some people might stick around. Germany sticks around for a while. So Germany wants longer videos. They love this. But everyone else is kind of at average. And I don't want to do anything that's too super long, because I feel like if you're not, and I know the subscribers generally do watch the whole thing, and I so appreciate that. But the average viewer, the shorter videos, they're able to jump in and jump out. I'm going to get into those Ryan George videos because I think they're really funny and they're short. I can knock out a few of those, put it out, and it's a little change of pace from just the evil stuff. I know not everyone likes it, but it is what it is. I'm trying to make this for everyone. So I'm going to go ahead and end this here. I'm going to do one more video tonight. It's almost 8 o'clock. So it's late. And I've got to do some laundry. And you don't care about any of this. Why am I telling you? Have a good day. Have a good night. Just make sure you have one of them. Good.